This morning, as we drove into recently liberated parts of Kherson region, the fog and then the fumes of military vehicles eventually cleared. Then into full focus, the Dnipro River. Its banks mark out the war's latest fault line. The Russians took the village of Mykhailivka at the beginning of the war. It was liberated a few weeks ago, part of the Ukrainians' recent gains in Kherson. The front line in the direction of the capital, Kherson city, about 15 miles down this road. The sound of Ukrainian multi-rocket launchers constant. Before we talk about orchestrated evacuations happening now in occupied Kherson downriver, we talk to Luba and her friends about war and the pain of departed family.
У Херсоні жили внуки, робили в аптеки дівчата, як почав перший день війна. І вони, старшій внучки чоловік, машина була, вони зібрали всі свої речі.
As the Russians dug in here, it became more difficult to leave. Not that everyone did. But I asked whether people could have left the village for Ukraine if they had wanted to back then. Natalia told us an horrific story.
For son-in-law, this lady used this road for escape this village.
Turns out there was a secret path out of the village along the river that people used to avoid Russian checkpoints and to get to the Ukrainian side. It's close to here. Someone posted a picture of that secret path on social media, and the Russians saw the picture. The Russians then mined that path. A few days later, a mother, father and child were trying to get out along the path. The father stepped on a mine and was killed. In other words, you could only leave occupied Kherson on Russian terms. Today downriver in occupied Kherson city, people leaving en masse on Russian terms. Ferried across the river, compliments of the proxy Russian administration here. Some may want to leave, some may feel they don't have a choice. The Russians are warning people that an imminent Ukrainian offensive will result in the city being shelled. That is the Dnipro River. You're likely to hear a lot about that river in the weeks to come. We're on the right bank of the river, Ukrainian controlled. On the other side of the river are the Russians. Now, last night, the puppet governor of Kherson region called for an evacuation, told people to leave this side and go to the other side. He said the Ukrainians were about to strike a dam, which is upriver, which is why the river's so wide at this point. Now, that is nonsense. The Ukrainians have no intention of hitting that dam. Why would they? But it's interpreted as the Russians thinking of a possible preamble to either a Russian retreat or a Ukrainian advance, or a mixture of both.
Российская армия обеспечит безопасный.
The new commander of Russian troops in Ukraine admitted that things were becoming very challenging for them in Kherson. He would not rule out taking, quote, the most difficult decisions, interpreted by many as the possibility, at least, of retreat. We only know any of this because of information coming from the Russian side. The Ukrainians are keeping stum. Every so often, though, a Ukrainian military official will tweet out a picture of a watermelon. And here is why. These teasing images are sent out to the Russians because Kherson is famous for growing watermelons. Back at the village, we meet Viktor. Russian soldiers believed he was feeding information to the Ukrainians about their positions here, which, as it turns out, he was. They brought him into the woods, put a bag over his head, staged a mock execution. A message for his would-be executioners today. Ukrainians could get rid of President Zelensky tomorrow if there was a vote and that's what was decided. That's democracy for you, he says. The men who put the gun to his head have Putin, Viktor says. Had Putin yesterday and today and will do tomorrow. And there's nothing they can do about that.